Stop chasing virtue, Machiavelli's radical power play. Have you ever wondered why the most virtuous people don't always rise to the top? Why those who play by the rules, who act with integrity, who try to do the right thing often get chewed up by the very systems they serve? Meanwhile, those who bend the rules or break them seem to thrive. This isn't just a cynical observation. It's a deep, uncomfortable truth that Niccolo Machiavelli saw with piercing clarity. And it's time we talked about it, really talked about it. Because we live in a world that praises virtue publicly, but rewards strategy privately. We've been fed a moral fantasy that if we're good, life will reward us. But what if that fantasy is holding us back? What if chasing virtue, as we've been taught, is the very thing keeping us from real power, real freedom, and real change? Machiavelli wasn't evil. He wasn't heartless. He was brutally honest. He saw the world not as we wish it to be, but as it is. And in The Prince, he lays out a shocking blueprint not for how to be good, but how to be effective. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else. Because if you confuse being good with being effective, you will be manipulated, you will be controlled, and you will be crushed by those who understand the game better than you do.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Now, let's be clear, Machiavelli didn't say virtue is useless. But he said something far more dangerous, that virtue, when not wielded with intelligence, is a liability. That moral purity, when applied naively, becomes a trap. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Because most of us want to believe that being good is enough, that if we just work hard, stay honest, and treat people well, the universe will reward us. But Machiavelli looked around at the power structures of Renaissance Italy and saw something very different. He saw that those who ruled didn't always get there by virtue, but by cunning, by timing, by adaptability. And most of all, by understanding that power is not won through ideals, it is won through realism. Here's the core of Machiavelli's radical idea: stop chasing virtue as an end in itself. Instead, pursue power with clarity. Use virtue when it serves your goals, but do not be ruled by it. This doesn't mean becoming a villain. It means becoming strategic. It means recognizing that in a world full of wolves, being a lamb isn't noble, it's suicidal. Well, think about it. How often do we admire people for their morality, but follow people for their decisiveness? We say we want leaders who are kind, but we vote for leaders who are strong. We preach compassion, but we reward confidence. Why? Because deep down we know that survival, progress, and influence require more than just goodness, they require mastery of the game. The real question is, are you willing to look at life without illusions? Are you willing to see that sometimes the pursuit of virtue blinds us to reality? That our obsession with appearing good can stop us from doing what's actually necessary? Machiavelli invites us to examine the uncomfortable tension between ethics and effectiveness. And he doesn't ask us to abandon virtue entirely. He asks us to use it wisely, to see it as a tool, not a shackle. Let's bring this down to the personal level. How many times have you held back from speaking your truth because you didn't want to seem rude? How many times have you tolerated disrespect because you wanted to be seen as nice? How often have you said yes when you meant no, just to keep the peace? That's chasing virtue. That's sacrificing your power on the altar of appearances. Machiavelli would say, stop. Stop giving away your strength for the sake of being liked. Stop silencing your instincts for the sake of being accepted. Stop chasing virtue when it costs you your voice, your agency, your life. Because here's the twist. The world doesn't need more people who are pretending to be good. It needs people who are awake, people who are aware, people who are willing to face the darkness, not to become it, but to navigate it. And Machiavelli gives us the map. He teaches us that to lead, to influence, to shape your own destiny, you must sometimes play a role. You must sometimes wear the mask. Not because you're fake, but because you understand that power is perception and reality is constructed in human minds. This isn't a license to be cruel. It's a call to be conscious, to stop apologizing for your power, to stop diluting your presence, to stop believing that virtue alone will save you, because it won't. Not in politics, not in business, not in life. What will save you is clarity, strategy, the ability to act decisively, even when it's uncomfortable, the willingness to do what is necessary, not just what is noble. So I want to leave you with a question that could change everything. Are you living your life based on what works or based on what looks good? Be honest. Deep down, are you making decisions based on fear of judgment, on needing approval, on wanting to seem moral, even when that morality costs you your freedom? If so, Machiavelli's warning is for you. He's not saying abandon your soul. He's saying wake up. Because if you don't learn how power works, someone else will use it against you. And that leads us to the next step, the deeper game. If you stop chasing virtue, what do you chase instead? The answer is shocking and liberating. Master the optics. Why perception beats truth every time. We've all heard the phrase perception is reality, but few of us understand just how literal that is. Machiavelli didn't just believe it, he weaponized it. He saw that in human affairs, what people believe to be true often matters more than what is true. And if you want power, not just political power, but the power to shape your life, your relationships, your destiny, you must master the optics. You must understand that controlling the narrative is often more powerful than controlling the facts. In a world where people rarely look beneath the surface becomes everything. Let's be honest, most people don't investigate deeply. They don't question their assumptions. They don't seek the raw truth, they seek affirmation. They seek certainty. They seek comfort. And that means they are vulnerable to appearances. You see it in politics, in social media, in business, in friendships. The person who seems confident is often trusted more than the one who is competent. The leader who acts decisive is followed more than the one who hesitates, even if the former is wrong. Why? Because perception is packaged reality. It's reality made digestible. And Machiavelli understood that whoever shapes that package shapes the world. He writes that a ruler must seem virtuous, even if he is not. That sentence has shaken generations. But it's not a call to lie for the sake of lying, it's a call to understand the human mind. People want symbols, not substance. They want stories, not spreadsheets. And if you can control the image, you can control the outcome. This isn't just about politics. It's about life. Think about your own experience. Have you ever trusted someone because they looked the part, sounded the part, dressed the part, only to discover later they had no substance? And yet, in that moment they had power over you. Why? Because they mastered the optics. Now, ask yourself this: how much of your own life is shaped by optics you haven't even chosen? The way you're perceived online, the way you're perceived at work, the way you're perceived by your family. Are you actively shaping that perception, or are you letting it be defined by others? Machiavelli would say that if you're not crafting your image, you're handing your power to those who are. This is not about being fake. It's about being intentional. There's a difference between manipulation and mastery. Manipulation is dishonest. Mastery is strategic. It's knowing that humans are wired for stories, and if you don't tell your own, someone else will write it for you. This is why Machiavelli's advice is so potent. He doesn't tell us to abandon truth, he tells us to recognize that truth by itself is not persuasive. That truth must be delivered in a form people can accept, admire, and follow. Think of it like this: raw electricity is useless unless it's channeled through a system. In the same way, raw truth is useless unless it's shaped into a form that resonates. And that means you need to learn the art of performance, not to deceive, but to deliver, not to manipulate emotions, but to move people. We admire authenticity, but what we really respond to is controlled authenticity. The kind that knows when to reveal, when to withhold, when to amplify, and when to remain silent. You don't show every card in your hand. You show the card that gets you to the next move. That's not dishonesty, it's strategy. And if that makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Who told you that being real means being exposed? Who told you that being good means being powerless? Machiavelli isn't asking you to be a fraud. He's asking you to be a master of delivery. Because in a world ruled by perception, truth without optics is a voice in the void. Here's the deeper insight. When you master perception, you don't just gain external power, you gain internal clarity. You stop being at the mercy of how others see you, because you begin shaping it. You stop being reactive. You become the author. And that changes everything. You stop chasing approval. You stop fearing judgment. Because you understand the game. You see the matrix. And once you see it, you can bend it. So now I ask you, what truth are you carrying that no one sees? Because you haven't learned how to show it. What power are you hiding because you're afraid of appearing arrogant, aggressive, or too much? What part of you is dying in the shadows simply because you haven't learned how to light it properly? Machiavelli's radical power play isn't about becoming less of yourself. It's about becoming more of yourself strategically, consciously, visibly. And when you stop chasing virtue and start mastering optics, you begin to realize something shocking. That power isn't taken, it's given. And people give it to those who appear to deserve it. In the next part, we'll ask the dangerous question: if power is perception and virtue is optional, what moral compass do we follow? We'll go deep into the ethics of ambition, beyond good and evil. The ethics of ruthless ambition. When we talk about ambition, we often wrap it in moral language. We say someone is too ambitious, and we mean they're willing to step on others. Or we praise someone for humble ambition, as if the desire to rise must always be softened by self-effacement. But Machiavelli throws a wrench into this whole framework. He asks us to confront a question we rarely voice aloud. Is it possible to be both ambitious and ethical? Or more radically, does ethics even matter in the pursuit of power? This is the part where most people look away. It's easier to cling to the comforting illusion that good people win and bad people lose. But history tells another story, and Machiavelli forces us to face it. He doesn't argue that ethics are meaningless. He argues that in the real world, in the world of politics, business, and human behavior, ethics must be flexible. That rigid moral idealism, while noble, is often incompatible with leadership. Why? Because real leadership requires hard decisions. It means choosing between evils. It means sacrificing one good for another. It means being willing to do what others aren't, to carry the burden of clarity in a world that prefers delusion. And if you try to lead while being obsessed with appearing holy, you will become paralyzed. You'll be stuck in a loop of indecision, always wondering what's right, while those who are willing to act will seize the advantage. Let's be honest with ourselves. The world is not a meritocracy. It's not a level playing field. It's a chaotic, complex, often brutal arena where those who understand human nature and are willing to act on that understanding shape outcomes. Machiavelli's genius was in seeing that power does not reward the most virtuous, it rewards the most strategic. And yet, this isn't a call to abandon morality. It's a call to evolve it. To stop seeing ethics as a rigid code and start seeing it as a compass, one that must be recalibrated in every situation. So what does that mean for us, practically? It means recognizing the difference between being ruthless and being reckless. Ruthless ambition isn't about harming others for sport. It's not about cruelty. It's about clarity. It's about being willing to do what is necessary for the greater goal, knowing that comfort and morality don't always align. It means understanding that kindness, while beautiful, is not always effective. That sometimes, to protect what matters, you must play hardball. You must hold the line. You must be willing to be misunderstood, sometimes even hated. Machiavelli admired leaders who could carry this weight, not because they were perfect, but because they were willing to make choices others feared. He wrote about Caesar Borgia not because he was a saint, but because he was effective. He consolidated power, maintained order, and kept chaos at bay. Was he virtuous? No, but he was clear. And in Machiavelli's view, clarity is a virtue of its own, one that many lack. Now, ask yourself this: what would you be capable of if you stopped needing to be seen as good? Not evil, not immoral, just free from the constant need for approval, free from the burden of appearing righteous. What if your moral compass was rooted not in appearances but in outcomes, in results, in the impact you actually have rather than how you're perceived? This doesn't mean you throw away your values. It means you prioritize them intelligently. It means you understand that sometimes, to protect peace, you must use force. That to create fairness, you must sometimes defy tradition. That to preserve what's sacred, you may have to do what seems profane. That's the paradox Machiavelli presents. To be truly ethical, you must sometimes act unethically, at least by conventional standards. And this is where true power begins, not in abandoning your soul, but in reclaiming it, in becoming the kind of person who can hold complexity, who can walk into the fire of moral ambiguity and not flinch, who can lead not because they're perfect, but because they're willing to do what is required. So the next time you find yourself hesitating, wondering what the right thing is, ask instead, what is the necessary thing? What serves the higher purpose? What protects what matters long-term? That's the ethics of ruthless ambition. It's not about destruction. It's about discernment. It's not about selfishness. It's about sovereignty. In the final part, we'll bring all of this together: the rejection of empty virtue, the mastery of perception, and the evolution of ethics into one final, explosive idea: how to win without losing yourself. The art of controlled chaos: how to win without losing your soul. So here we are. You've made it through the discomfort, the contradiction, the unraveling of everything you thought you knew about virtue, power, and ambition. Now comes the final twist, the part Machiavelli never wrote as a formula but embedded in his philosophy like a hidden flame. How do you win the game of life without becoming a hollow version of yourself? How do you walk through the fire of power, perception, and ruthless ambition and still hold on to something real inside you? The answer is what I call the art of controlled chaos. Let's unpack that. Controlled chaos isn't about being reckless or impulsive. It's about embracing the unpredictable nature of life: power, people, opportunity, danger, and learning to ride it like a wave. It's about understanding that the world is never going to be fully stable, that your plans will never be perfectly executed, and that nothing you build will ever be entirely safe. And yet, within that uncertainty, you learn to move like a master, not by forcing control, but by becoming the center of gravity in your own world. That's what Machiavelli meant when he talked about virtue, not moral virtue, but personal power, the force of character that bends fate without needing to break it. When you stop chasing virtue, when you master perception, when you evolve your ethics, you arrive at a new kind of leadership, not over others, but over yourself. And that's the most dangerous and beautiful power of all. Because once you know how the game works, you don't have to play it the way everyone else does. You can move through the world with clarity, with strategy, with precision, and still keep your soul intact. Because you're no longer acting from fear, you're acting from awareness. Machiavelli never said abandon your conscience. He said expand it. He said stop pretending the world is a church when it's actually a battlefield. But once you accept that, you don't become a monster. You become something far rarer, a conscious warrior. You learn when to speak and when to stay silent, when to show your strength and when to cloak it in silence, when to take the hit and when to strike. You learn to live with tension, with contradiction, with the knowledge that you won't always get it right, but you'll always move forward with your eyes open. Here's what most people miss: the chaos is never going away. The world is messy, unpredictable, and full of competing agendas. But when you stop resisting that chaos, when you learn to dance with it, shape it, even use it, you become unshakable. People around you will still be chasing approval, trying to look good, playing a game they don't understand. And you'll be shaping reality, not because you're ruthless, but because you're real. Not because you've lost your soul, but because you've finally taken responsibility for it. So what does this mean for your life? It means stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for conditions to be perfect. Stop waiting to feel ready or pure or safe. Start acting with intention. Start designing your image. Start choosing your battles. Start using your fear as fuel. And above all, start trusting your ability to walk through moral ambiguity without becoming morally bankrupt. That is the true art. That is Machiavelli's final gift, not a manual for corruption, but a mirror for courage. Because in the end, power isn't about domination. It's about direction. It's about who gets to steer the ship when the storm hits. And if you've done the work, if you've stopped chasing surface virtue, if you've mastered the optics, if you've evolved your ethics, then you are that person. Calm in the chaos, strategic in the storm, grounded in something deeper than performance, purpose. So here's the final question I leave with you, the one that cuts through all the noise. What kind of leader are you becoming, not in the eyes of others, but in the depth of your own soul? Are you willing to hold power without losing yourself? Are you ready to embrace complexity without collapsing into confusion? Because if you are, then you've already won. And that is the real power play.